Welcome to Cultivated Live for Thursday, August 1st, 2024. I am Jay Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media, the host of this program, Cultivated Live. And since we launched last November 2023, our goal at Cultivated has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, and useful information every single day. We do that through our daily newsletter, which is at called Cultivated Daily. You can find it at cultivated.news. We do that through this daily live stream, which we stream through our LinkedIn channel and through YouTube. So follow us and subscribe respectively on those two channels. Today and almost every Thursday, I'm with my friend Krista Raymer, the founder of Vetrina, the foremost cannabis retail consultancy, not just in North America, but I'll say the world. Krista, maybe nobody.
Okay. First off, your intro is getting good, but you got to get to your website right.
I know, it's
And
cultivated.news. Did I get it wrong? I think I did. Anyway.
There's a stumble.
Anyway.
You do this
At least I'm
every
not saying my
day.
previous business, which I have said before by mistake. So I'm not saying that. So that's at least I'm growing and improving there. Krista, we have you on Thursdays. We talk about cannabis retail. One of the things that I think comes up in every conversation, whether you're talking to like a technology company or any given retailer or a brand or a price point, anybody doing any work, is, well, there's a number name for it. Average order value or average basket size. Like, foundationally, is that something people measure? Let's start there.
Foundationally, it's what everybody measures. And I think when we go into dispensaries, it will often be the store manager, maybe area manager, talk about that average basket size as one of the ways to grow the business. But it's very misleading. It's actually not that helpful of a KPI. So it's something that I think is leading a lot of people astray.
So let's just define what it is. It's like everybody that comes in or orders online, it's like taking the dollar value of that order, dividing it by, add it all up, divide it by how many orders were. That's the average basket size, right?
Yeah, and sometimes like the calculation might vary per technology provider. Most of the time they're a weighted average, which would help you to make sure that it's not just the middle, but it takes some consideration of where the majority of the dollars sit. So what that might look like is like if there are 10 transactions, how does the spend, there would be an average number, but then there would be a weighted average number, which might tell you a different story. So a lot of them are using some version of a weighted average.
And what is a weighted average? Sorry,
a weighted average is going to give more value to the transactions that have something more in common. So let's say, for example, if you had 10 transactions and the majority of those transactions were $8, but you had a couple transactions that were 1 or 2, if you took the average between those, it's going to skew closer to the 1 or 2, which is a bit of an outlier in terms of the data, whereas a weighted average is going to bring that average up closer to that 8 number. It might not give you exactly 8, but it's going to take into consideration that more of the volume sits in that $8 bucket.
Understood. Like in this scenario, like there's 10 and all of them are 5, 9 of them are $5, but there's one that's 1,000, like it'll skew all the data. So like not really like weight them appropriately to balance out the outliers.
Yes, totally.
And when people look at this weighted average order value, whatever we call it, and then they think if we could just increase that, we'd be making more money. But my sense is, because I know you, it's not necessarily that simple.
Yeah, it isn't that simple. From a data perspective, like if we want to do the real math and understand what goes into that basket, that's how we actually understand where there's an opportunity to grow basket size. So directionally, store managers and a lot of store teams are on the right path, is like understanding how do we get the customer to spend a little bit more. If we use the average basket size, though, it's misleading because that's actually not how the majority of customers are likely purchasing. So let's talk even further about what that example is. So let's say that you have a retail environment and in the month of June, maybe you did $200,000 in sales. Now the average basket size of that $200,000 in sales maybe was $65. When we take a look at how the transactions play within that $65, it doesn't tell you that most customers spend $65. So if a store manager is like, I'd like to increase our sales and therefore we will get our customers to spend $67 instead of $65, it's really not a helpful way to try and increase basket sizes and likely will lead to failure. So instead, it's like we have to understand the components that go into the transaction and then say, what actions can we take? The simplest way without getting like too mathy and nerdy is to just look at the number of transactions with only one item on them and try and increase our basket size by just saying, let's sell less transactions with just one item. That will lift the average basket size. But if you want to get nerdy, and we've already kind of like optimized for that, the next thing would be to take a look at your basket size and then understand how different transactions fit into buckets. So the example of this is in your $200,000 in sales, how many transactions maybe were between $10 and $20, and then 20 and 30, and you can go up accordingly. What it will show you is where the volume of the transactions are sitting and what type of revenue that volume created. In our example of weighted, this is where it gets very complicated, and why I say like lifting from 65 to 75 or 65 to 67 isn't helpful is because most of the transactions are sitting in low volume, like, or low dollar values, and then an up higher. There is not a lot of in between. And we've taken a look at this like with a lot of retailers at this point operating in different states. And it's because there are different customer behaviors going on. And so if you want to dig into what we need to do within an environment to lift the average basket size, we actually have to understand what the composition of that number is and what data points are basically feeding into that number to make it more actionable. So in this, it might say, if we've already optimized for reduce the number of baskets with only one item, the next step might be to say, let's increase the number of transactions that are under $10. Let's just say we want to get to 10 wherever we can. And that would lift your overall average basket size, but also have a really positive impact on total revenue.
I see. So it's, and then even take it further, understand if I'm a frontline worker or a store manager, like we know that's a large percent, a large percentage of our sales are under $10. How do we get those customers specifically to 10 and beyond? Like that's one strategy. Different and apart from the strategy, it's like we have people coming in once a month spending $120. How do we get them to 150? Like a totally different strategy, different approach from a sales perspective, and actually not even relevant to each other because it's a totally different strategy. Those customers look, feel, shop nothing alike. And it is more nuanced than, and neither one of those two things will get at that, getting the $65 average basket size to 67. It's actually unrelated.
Yeah, and your example is a great example of where this falls down in retail stores. Is like maybe a team will analyze the business and then say, okay, we want to increase to $65 or 67. But the teams in store, like the majority of our customers who come in, walk in the doors and say, I have $20 to spend. What can I get today?
Right.
And so the teams are like, we're never going to get this customer to spend $67, or like maybe 1 in 10 customers we can get to do that. And so it is one of those really good examples of where like the data says one thing, but the boots on the ground support to action towards that goal needs to be a different thing.
And I'm going to take it one step further because I read your blog religiously, is that and once that disconnect is made on this particular thing, like if you are a store manager or sort of a corporate store saying, we want our average basket size to be $67, but the most common volume is like $15, there's no way to get that. Like you're talking two different languages, right? You're looking at
two different customers,
right? Where a more a simpler way to actually say it is, we want to increase basket size by 10%, right? Then or move the $10 to like 15, which is actually a 50% increase. Like it actually does change the conversation, makes it much more what is actually happening in store, as opposed to saying we want everything to be, $67, which is, which by the way, like hurts the bigger sales, but also, is irrelevant to the smaller ones.
Yeah. And so like how you do that is also really interesting. I mean, if from an inventory and procurement perspective, what you could do is support the team with the right price product in store that maybe they don't need to do anything or think about the numbers, but you have a better understanding of the composition of the baskets. You can support them with better inventory pricing to be able to help them to achieve those goals. From a bud tender perspective, you don't want Like there's enough going on in a store. Customers are complicated. You don't need that team member standing there trying to do mental math of like, how much do I need to increase this basket size? And it also usually leads to sales feeling icky.
Right.
So instead, if we talk about increasing the number of transactions with less than 1 unit or like 1 unit, increasing the number of transactions that are 2 units as opposed to one, we will be in a much better place. And that's a very easy directive with teams. Then you say, how do we merchandise the store to be able to support this goal? Okay, do we have the lighters in the right place? Do we have the edibles in the right place? Do we have the infused and pre-roll joints in the right place to be able for bud tenders to add an extra item per transaction? And that will also support the overall initiative of lifting basket size.
One theme that strikes me as every time we talk is that it's not as simple as simpletons seem to think it is, right? Like, but also there are achievable things to do on the ground that can make a measurable difference. But it takes thought in advance to actually implement it. That's my takeaway from what you tell me.
Like retail is actually simple. It's one transaction at a time. We're building customer spend one transaction at a time and hoping that we keep as many customers as we can, in theory.
Right.
When we get into optimization, that's where you have to pick and choose what things you're going to make complicated and then try and simplify. Because in our example today is like, we can come up with 10 million ways to make this very complicated for store teams.
Right.
But if we don't then navigate how to simplify the action points within the business, it won't have any impact. So like we can run this analysis every Monday, and every Monday it's a slightly different thing. But if we don't know what to do with that or how to translate that into really actionable things, it doesn't matter. It won't have the impact that you're looking for. So to your point, it's like, yes, retail is simple. But at the same time, when we get into optimizations, there is how do you drill in and really understand what is going on and then back out and simplify it so that it's actionable for everybody within the teams that need to make it come together to happen. Ultimately, it's the teams that are dealing with the customers in front of them.
Yes. Everything Krista said, as usual, on Thursday.
Yep.
It's
the
true.
Teams like, yeah, we have really great assets in store. Like with bud tenders, as well as like inventory, as well as signage. Like there's so much positive opportunity within an environment. It just has to come together in a way that supports them to sell in a way that you want to see the outcomes.
Right. That all makes sense to me. But also I would talk to you because you're the brains of the operation in this respect. And I super appreciate everything you do and say, because I learn a lot, as I say almost every Thursday. I learn a lot from you about what's happening in cannabis retail for sure, but also what's happening in non-cannabis retail, where even as you talk, I'm thinking about non-traditional, like regular retail, where there's so many different opportunities to add something to a basket that's not cannabis related, right? Like I think that's also many of the stores we're talking about, or the retail environments in cannabis, like they are a little bit hamstrung through regulations that they're not allowed to sell other stuff necessarily, right? They're not allowed to add gum to a purchase. They're not like all those things that you would increase the number of things in the basket, the average basket size, and the opportunities become very challenging in a cannabis environment where you're really just selling cannabis and accessories.
Yeah. I mean, it's can be a very complicated situation, but we also do have the inventory and the types of products available in like most markets, especially if they're a rec market, to do some of this. It just is about understanding what assortment you need to facilitate it and then how it needs to show up from a merchandising perspective.
Got it. Krista, thank you for making time on Thursdays for us.
Always. Love to be here.
Also, it's a long weekend heading into Canada. So tomorrow is a Friday before a long weekend for most of Canada. I think most of Canada. It's August long weekend, which I know that for our American friends, that sounds like a fake holiday.
It's a cute holiday.
It's the best holiday. I think it's a holiday. So we have a long weekend in every month of May, June, July, August, and then September. But you got to take advantage of the weather when you get it.
This is true. August in Canada is amazing.
August is great. So anybody wants to be in Canada this this weekend. Like, it's a long weekend. So Monday will be busy at the border is what I can say to my friends in Buffalo and Niagara Falls. But Krista, thanks for making time, and dispensaries, get ready for a big day today and tomorrow as we head into a long weekend here in Canada. Krista, as always, thank you for being here on Thursday. That's it for today's Cultivated Live. We encourage you to subscribe to our daily newsletter. Here, I'm going to get it right, at cultivated.news. There you go. Follow us on LinkedIn. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube. We'll be back here tomorrow, which is Friday, August 2nd. I'll be running the tour I took of Panacea, a dispensary in Quincy, Massachusetts. And remember, buy cannabis at your local dispensary today. Really, any day. It's a good day to buy cannabis at a local dispensary. And we'll see everybody here tomorrow.